The teacher laughed when the kid said his father was the vampire king. She called him a liar, made the whole class mock him. Then shadows filled the room, the windows frosted over, and his father stepped through the darkness, ancient, powerful, and very real. The classroom smelled like dried markers and old carpet. 23 kids sat in crooked rows, half listening, half daydreaming. It was show and tell Friday, and so far, nobody had said anything interesting. "All right, Aiden," Mrs. Patterson said, adjusting her glasses. "Your turn. Tell us about your family." Aiden stood up slowly, his sneakers squeaking against the linoleum. He was small for 8 years old, with dark hair that fell over pale gray eyes. His fingers twisted the hem of his shirt. "My dad is the vampire king," he said quietly. Silence. Then Tommy Jenkins snorted. "Yeah, and my mom's a werewolf." Laughter rippled through the room. Mrs. Patterson's smile was thin and tired. She'd been teaching for 15 years, and she'd heard it all. Astronaut parents, secret agent uncles, celebrity cousins who never quite existed. "Aiden," she said, her voice dripping with practiced patience, "we talked about this. Show and tell is about real things. Your father works nights, correct? Perhaps he's a security guard? A nurse?" "No," Aiden whispered. "He's the vampire king. He rules the shadow clans beneath the city." More laughter. Louder this time. "He sleeps in a coffin," someone shouted. "Does he sparkle?" another kid yelled. Mrs. Patterson raised her hand for quiet, but her expression had hardened. "Aiden, this is inappropriate. Lying to the class wastes everyone's time. I think you should sit down and think about." The lights flickered. Once. Twice. The laughter died in every throat. "Probably just the storm," Mrs. Patterson said, though there was no storm. The sky outside had been perfectly clear moments ago. The temperature dropped. Fast. Kids pulled their jackets tighter. Someone whispered, "Why is it so cold?" Frost crawled across the windows in thin, branching patterns, beautiful and wrong. The kind of frost that shouldn't exist in October, in a heated building, in the middle of the day. Aiden's eyes went wide. "Dad, no," he breathed. "Not here." "What did you say?" Mrs. Patterson demanded. The shadows in the corner of the room moved. Not the way shadows move when light shifts. They moved on their own. They peeled away from the wall like living smoke, twisting and coiling upward, growing darker and thicker until they became solid. And then he was there. He didn't walk through the door. He didn't climb through the window. He simply was, standing in the front of the classroom, as if he'd always been there, waiting. Tall. Impossibly tall. Dressed in a black coat that seemed to absorb light, trimmed with silver thread that glinted like starlight. His face was sharp and ageless, with high cheekbones and skin so pale it looked carved from marble. But it was his eyes that made Mrs. Patterson's breath catch, deep crimson, glowing faintly, like embers in a dying fire. He looked at Aiden first, and his expression softened. Just slightly. "Hello, son." Aiden's voice cracked. "Dad, you can't be here. You promised." Plans change. The man's gaze shifted to Mrs. Patterson, and she felt her bones turn to ice. "You laughed at my child." I didn't." She couldn't finish the sentence. Her tongue felt thick and useless. He took one step forward. The floor beneath his foot cracked, not loudly, but with a soft, splintering sound, like frozen earth breaking. Thin veins of shadow spread from where he stood, spiderwebbing across the tiles. "You told him he was lying." His voice was quiet. Calm. Worse than shouting. "You humiliated him in front of his peers." Who are you?" Mrs. Patterson stammered. "I am Lucent, king of the night court. Keeper of the old bloodlines." He tilted his head, studying her the way a scientist studies an insect. "And that boy you mocked is my son, the Shadow Prince." Tommy Jenkins whimpered. A girl near the back started crying. Lucent's eyes never left Mrs. Patterson. "I have walked this earth for 7 centuries. I have watched empires rise and fall. I have ended wars with a word and started them with silence. And you, teacher, dared to shame my child for speaking the truth. The classroom was silent except for the sound of frost spreading across glass. Mrs. Patterson wanted to run, wanted to scream, but she couldn't move. It wasn't magic holding her in place. It was pure, primal fear. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "No," Lucent said softly. "You didn't." He glanced at the children, frozen in their seats, and something like regret flickered across his face. "I did not come here to frighten mortals. But there are rules, even in your world. Respect is one of them." He turned back to Aiden. "Gather your things."
What? Why?
"Because the hunters have found us." The words hit like a punch. Aiden's face went white. "But you said we were safe." "You said." "I was wrong." Lucent's jaw tightened. "They tracked the bloodline. We have minutes, perhaps less." As if summoned by his words, the fire alarm screamed to life. But it wasn't the alarm. It was something else, something howling through the vents, a sound like wind and wolves and fury, all mixed together. Lucent moved faster than thought, crossing the room in a blur and pulling Aiden close. "Stay behind me." The classroom door exploded inward. Wood splintered, metal bent, and through the smoke and debris stepped three figures in black tactical gear, faces hidden behind masks, silver weapons gleaming in their hands. One of them spoke, voice distorted by a modulator. "Lucent Morgan, by order of the Hunters' Covenant, you are bound to answer for crimes against the living realm." Lucent's smile was cold and sharp. "I answer to no one." The lead hunter raised a crossbow. "Then you die." Everything happened at once. Lucent threw his hand forward, and the shadows erupted like a tidal wave, slamming into the hunters and hurling them backward into the hallway. Mrs. Patterson screamed. "Kids dove, under desks." Lucent scooped Aiden into his arms. "Hold on. Dad, wait." But Lucent was already moving, carrying his son toward the window. With a flick of his wrist, the glass shattered outward in a glittering explosion. And then they were gone, vanishing into the daylight, wrapped in shadows that shouldn't exist, leaving behind a classroom full of terrified children and one teacher who would never laugh at show and tell again. The fall should have killed them. 3 stories straight down onto concrete. But Aiden didn't feel impact. He felt cold. The shadows wrapped around them like a cocoon, cushioning their landing until his feet touched solid ground in what felt like slow motion. They were in an alley behind the school.
Dark.
Narrow. The kind of place nobody noticed. "Run," Lucent commanded, setting Aiden down. "Where?" "Run." Behind them, the hunters crashed through the window.
No hesitation.
No fear of the fall. They hit the ground in perfect formation, already moving, weapons raised. Lucent grabbed Aiden's hand, and they sprinted deeper into the alley. At the dead end, where a brick wall should have stopped them, Lucent pressed his palm flat against the surface. The bricks rippled like water, and suddenly there was a doorway, ancient stone steps leading down into absolute darkness. "What is that?" Aiden gasped. "The old ways. Paths your kind forgot." Lucent pulled him through. The doorway sealed behind them with a sound like grinding teeth. They descended fast, the stairs spiraling downward. The air grew colder with each step, thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something metallic and old. Aiden's eyes adjusted slowly. Faint symbols glowed on the walls, painted in what looked like silver. They pulsed with a dim, eerie light, just enough to see by. "Dad, what's happening? Why are they after us?" "Not us. You." Lucent's voice echoed in the narrow passage. "They know what you are." "I don't understand." "You will." The stairs ended abruptly. They emerged into an abandoned subway tunnel, the kind the city maps didn't show anymore. Old tracks ran through the center, rusted and forgotten. But the walls were covered in markings. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Symbols and scripts in languages Aiden had never seen. Vampire clans have existed beneath human cities for millennia, Lucent explained, moving quickly along the tunnel. We built our kingdoms in the spaces you abandoned. These tunnels are older than the trains that once ran through them. Aiden struggled to keep up. You never told me any of this. I was trying to give you a normal childhood. Lucent's laugh was bitter. Foolish, perhaps. But you're my son before you're anything else. I wanted you to have time. Time for what? Lucent stopped walking.
Turned.
His red eyes caught the dim light, and Aiden saw something in them he'd never seen before.
Fear.
Aiden, there is a prophecy. An ancient one, spoken by the first of our kind. It says that one day, a child will be born of two worlds, human and vampire. This child will carry the blood of kings and the heart of mortals. And this child will either unite the warring clans, or destroy them all. The words hung in the cold air. That's me, Aiden whispered. Isn't it? That's you. Lucent knelt down, eye to eye with his son. The Shadow Prince. The one who can walk in daylight without burning. The one who can command shadows like I do, but also feel compassion, love. Things our kind forgot centuries ago. But Mom, your mother was human.
Brave.
Beautiful. She knew what I was, and she loved me anyway. Pain flickered across Lucent's face. She died bringing you into this world. And with her last breath, she made me promise to protect you. To let you choose your own path. Aiden's throat tightened. I don't want to be a prince. I just want. A sound echoed through the tunnel. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Fast and getting closer. Lucent stood instantly, positioning himself between Aiden and the darkness ahead. They found the entrance. The hunters? Worse, Lucent's voice dropped to a growl. Rogue vampires. Assassins hired to make sure the prophecy never comes true. 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Not human. Not anymore. Their faces were gaunt, eyes glowing yellow, fingers ending in claws that scraped against stone. They wore tattered clothes that might have been elegant once, centuries ago. The lead assassin smiled, revealing fangs like broken glass. Little Prince. The clans send their regards. Lucent's power erupted. Shadows exploded from his body like wings, filling the tunnel, blotting out the dim light. The temperature plummeted. Frost formed on the metal tracks instantly. Touch my son, Lucent said, his voice multiplying, echoing with ancient authority, and I will erase you from existence. The assassins hesitated, just for a moment. It was enough. Lucent moved like lightning. His hand shot forward, and one assassin simply dissolved, crumbling into ash before he could scream. The second lunged, claws extended, but Lucent caught him by the throat and slammed him into the wall with such force the bricks cracked. The third assassin ran. Smart. Lucent let him go. He turned back to Aiden, breathing hard, and for the first time, Aiden saw it. His father was tired. The display of power had cost him. We need to reach the safe house, Lucent said. Before more come. Can you run? Aiden nodded, still staring at the pile of ash that used to be a vampire. Good boy. Lucent took his hand again, gentler this time. Stay close. And Aiden? Yeah. Welcome to your inheritance. They ran deeper into the darkness, leaving the old world behind. The chapel rose from the darkness like a ghost. Ancient stone walls, covered in ivy and centuries of grime. Stained glass windows, cracked but still beautiful, depicted scenes Aiden didn't recognize, figures with wings fighting creatures with fangs. A cross hung above the entrance, tilted and rusted. A church? Aiden asked, confused. I thought vampires couldn't. Another myth. Lucent pushed open the heavy wooden door. We cannot enter uninvited homes. Sacred ground is different. Besides, this chapel hasn't seen a prayer in 200 years. It belongs to us now. Inside, the air smelled of candle wax and old books. Rows of broken pews lined the floor. But at the altar, someone waited. A woman, tall and graceful, with skin like polished ebony and silver hair that fell to her waist. She wore armor. Actual armor, black leather reinforced with metal plates, a sword strapped to her back. Her eyes were golden, warm despite their inhuman color. "You're late," she said. "We were delayed." Lucent released Aiden's hand. "Seraphine, meet my son. Properly this time." Seraphine knelt, bringing herself to Aiden's eye level. Her smile was genuine. "Hello, little prince. I've waited a long time to meet you. You're a vampire too." "I am. And I've protected your father for 3 centuries. Now I'll protect you." She stood, her expression darkening as she looked at Lucent. "The hunters hit the school in daylight. They're getting bolder." "They're getting desperate," Lucent corrected. He moved to a table covered in maps and scrolls. "The clans are fracturing. Without unity, we're vulnerable. They know if they eliminate Aiden, the prophecy dies with him." Aiden's head spun. "Can someone please explain this prophecy? In normal words?" Seraphine gestured to a chair. "Sit, child. Let me tell you a story." "Thousands of years ago," Seraphine began, her voice taking on the rhythm of old tales, "vampires were not hidden. We ruled openly, and humanity served us. But we were cruel, divided. 13 clans, each fighting for dominance, each drowning in blood and pride." She walked to a stained glass window depicting a burning city. "We nearly destroyed ourselves. In desperation, the first vampire, the one we call the progenitor, spoke a prophecy before she vanished into the eternal night. She said, 'When darkness devours itself, a child of 2 bloods shall rise, born of shadow and sun, of death and breath. This child shall bind the broken or watch the bloodlines fade into forgotten dust.'" "That's me," Aiden said quietly. "The child of 2 bloods."
Yes.
"Your father is the strongest of the vampire kings. Your mother was human. You are the bridge between worlds. The only one who can unite the 13 clans before we tear each other apart." Seraphine's golden eyes softened. "But many don't want unity. They want power. And a child threatens that." Aiden looked at his hands. "Normal.
Small.
Nothing special. I can't even control shadows like Dad. How am I supposed to unite anyone?" "The power will come," Lucent said from across the room. "When you're ready. When you need it most."
A phone rang.
Old-fashioned. Rotary dial sitting on the altar. Seraphine answered it. Listened. Then her face went pale. "We have a problem," she said slowly. "A human problem." Miles away, in her small apartment, Mrs. Patterson couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him. The vampire king. Lucent.
Real. Impossible. Real.
She told the police what happened. They'd found the destroyed classroom, the blown-out window, 3 unconscious intruders in tactical gear who claimed to remember nothing. But no vampire.
No sados.
Just chaos. They'd called it a gas leak. Hallucinations. Mass hysteria. But Mrs. Patterson knew what she'd seen. She sat at her laptop, searching, typing phrases she never imagined she'd use. Vampire sightings, Lucent Morgan, Shadow King. Most results were garbage. Fiction. Movie promotions. But then she found something else. A digitized historical archive from the 1500s. A painting from a Venetian court. The caption read, "Lord Lucent of the Night Court, Ambassador to the Doge." The man in the painting was identical. Same face. Same sharp features. Same unsettling eyes, even captured in oil paint. 500 years ago. Mrs. Patterson's hands shook. Oh God. Aiden was telling the truth. She kept searching. Found more. References in plague doctor journals. A mention in Salem, witch trial records. Always the same name. Always the same description. And always, he was described as protecting someone. A child. A bloodline. Mrs. Patterson closed her laptop. Her mind raced. That little boy.
Aiden.
Terrified. Pulled from school by literal monsters hunting him. She'd laughed at him. Humiliated him. And now he was out there. In danger. She grabbed her coat. She didn't know where she was going. didn't have a plan. But she couldn't just sit here. Not after what she'd done. Teachers were supposed to protect their students, even from vampires. Back in the chapel, Seraphine hung up the phone. The teacher. Patterson. She's searching for information about you, Lucent. And she's asking questions. Dangerous questions. Kill her, Lucent said flatly.
No.
Aiden jumped up. She was just scared. She didn't know. She's a liability. She's a person. Aiden's voice cracked. If you kill everyone who learns about us, what makes you different from the hunters? Silence fell heavy in the chapel. Seraphine watched Lucent carefully. The boy has a point. Lucent's jaw tightened. Then slowly he nodded. Monitor her. If she becomes a threat, we'll reconsider. But Aiden, he met his son's eyes. In this world, mercy is often repaid with betrayal. Remember that. Aiden nodded, but didn't look away. I'll remember. But I'll still choose mercy. For the first time that day, Lucent smiled. A real smile. Your mother's son, he whispered. Outside, the sun set. And in the growing darkness, yellow eyes watched the chapel from the shadows. The assassins were regrouping. Aiden woke to the sound of breaking glass. He'd fallen asleep in one of the chapel pews, exhausted from the day's terror. Now shadows danced on the walls, wrong shadows, moving with purpose and malice. Seraphine. Lucent's voice boomed from above. Aiden scrambled up just as the main door exploded inward. Not hunters this time. Vampires. A dozen of them, moving with inhuman speed, their eyes glowing in the dim light like angry stars. Seraphine appeared beside Aiden instantly, sword drawn. The roof. They breached from above. More crashes. The stained glass windows shattered simultaneously, and dark figures poured through like smoke. They wore crimson bands around their arms, a symbol Aiden didn't recognize, but somehow knew meant death. The Red Talon clan, Seraphine hissed. Assassins. They've never failed a contract. There's a first time for everything. Lucent's voice came from the darkness above. Then he dropped from the rafters, landing in a crouch that cracked the stone floor. His eyes blazed crimson. You dare enter my sanctuary? The lead assassin stepped forward, a woman with white hair and scars across her face. Your sanctuary means nothing, fallen king. The boy dies tonight. The clans have spoken. Then the clans will learn regret. Lucent moved. It wasn't like the tunnel. There he'd been controlled, measured. Now he was fury given form. Shadows erupted from his body like living blades, impaling 3 assassins before they could blink. They screamed, high, terrible sounds, before crumbling to ash. The others attacked as one. The chapel became a battlefield. Seraphine's sword sang through the air, silver bright, cutting down any who came near Aiden. Lucent fought like a storm, shadows and claws, moving too fast to follow, each strike lethal. But there were too many. An assassin broke through, lunging for Aiden with claws extended. Aiden froze, his mind blank with terror. The shadows moved on their own. They rose from Aiden's feet like guard dogs, forming a barrier that caught the assassin mid-leap and slammed him into the wall with bone-crushing force. Everyone stopped, stared. Aiden looked at his hands. They were glowing faintly, outlined in darkness. Impossible, the scarred woman whispered. His powers are awakening. We're out of time. Use the blade. Another assassin produced a dagger from his coat. It looked ancient, the metal black as midnight, covered in symbols that hurt to look at. Even from across the room, Aiden could feel its wrongness.
No.
Lucent roared, but he was surrounded, 3 assassins holding him back. The dagger-wielding vampire moved with terrible purpose, heading straight for Aiden. Seraphine intercepted, her sword meeting his blade with a shriek of metal that shouldn't have been possible. The cursed dagger won. It sliced through Seraphine's sword like paper and continued its arc, opening a gash across her shoulder. She stumbled back, golden blood streaming down her armor. The assassin smiled and turned to Aiden, and Lucent appeared between them in a blur of shadow. The cursed blade sank into his chest. Time seemed to stop. Lucent looked down at the dagger embedded in his ribs, black veins spreading from the wound like poison. His expression wasn't pain. It was surprise.
Dad.
Aiden screamed. Lucent grabbed the assassin's wrist and squeezed. Bones shattered like dry twigs. Then, with his other hand, he pulled the dagger free and drove it into the assassin's throat. The man dissolved instantly, but the damage was done. Lucent staggered. The wound in his chest pulsed with dark energy, refusing to heal. He turned to Seraphine, blood, impossibly red, like fresh rubies, dripping from the corner of his mouth. "Get him out," he said.
Now.
"You can't fight them all like this."
Now.
Seraphine didn't argue. She grabbed Aiden, lifting him like he weighed nothing, and ran for the back exit. Aiden fought against her grip, tears streaming down his face.
Dad.
Dad. The last thing he saw before they burst through the door was Lucent, wounded and surrounded, summoning every ounce of power he had left. The shadows in the chapel came alive, forming a massive dome of darkness that swallowed everything. The explosion shook the ground. Seraphine ran across the rooftops with supernatural speed. Aiden clutched to her chest. Behind them, the chapel was engulfed in black fire, shadow flames that consumed stone and wood and vampire alike. "Is he?" Aiden couldn't finish the question. "I don't know," Seraphine said, and her voice cracked for the first time. "I don't know." They leaped from roof to roof, the city spreading below them in a maze of lights and darkness. Aiden looked back one last time. The chapel was collapsing, shadows and smoke billowing into the night sky. And somewhere in that destruction, his father was either fighting or dying. Aiden buried his face in Seraphine's armor and cried. He'd spent his whole life thinking his dad was just Dad. Quiet, worked nights, made terrible pancakes on weekends. Now he understood the truth. His father was a king, a warrior, a monster, and a protector all at once. And Aiden might have just lost him. "Where are we going?" he asked through tears. Seraphine's jaw set in determination. "Somewhere they can't follow. Somewhere even I was forbidden to take you." "Where?" "Home, little prince. Your true home." Her golden eyes reflected the city lights. The Umbra Sanctum, the kingdom beneath the world. The entrance was hidden in the oldest part of the city's sewer system. Seraphine carried Aiden through tunnels that smelled of rust and forgotten time, moving deeper than any maintenance worker would dare go. Finally, they reached a wall that looked solid, until Seraphine pressed her palm against it and spoke words in a language that made Aiden's ears ring. The wall dissolved like mist. Beyond it was a staircase carved from black stone, spiraling down into depths that shouldn't exist. Torches lined the walls, burning with flames that gave off no smoke, their light silver instead of gold. "Stay close," Seraphine warned. "And no matter what you see, don't be afraid. They can smell fear." "Who can?" "Everyone." They descended for what felt like hours. Aiden's legs burned, his mind still reeling from the chapel attack. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the cursed blade entering his father's chest. The black veins spreading. The blood. "He's alive," Seraphine said suddenly, as if reading his thoughts. "I would feel it if he'd fallen. The bond between king and protector runs deep. But he's hurt. That blade was forged specifically to kill vampire royalty." "Yes," Seraphine's voice was grim. "The fact that he survived it at all proves his strength. But he'll need time to heal. Time we may not have." The stairs ended. Aiden stepped out onto a ledge, and his breath caught. The Umbra Sanctum stretched before him like something from a fever dream. It was a city, an entire city carved into a cavern so massive the ceiling was lost in darkness. Buildings rose like Gothic cathedrals, all spires and arches, built from stone that gleamed like polished obsidian. Rivers of luminescent water, glowing pale blue, flowed through channels cut into the streets, providing light without sun. Bridges made of what looked like solidified shadow connected different levels of the city. Vampires moved across them, some walking, others simply dissolving into mist and reforming elsewhere. They wore clothes from different eras, Victorian gowns beside modern suits beside ancient armor. "It's beautiful," Aiden whispered. "It's a cage," Seraphine corrected, "built to hide us from the sun and humanity."
But yes.
"It's beautiful, too." They descended into the city proper. Vampires stopped to stare as they passed. Some bowed deeply when they saw Aiden. Others' eyes narrowed with something that looked like hatred. "Why are they looking at me like that?" Aiden asked. "Some see hope. Others see a threat to their power." Seraphine guided him through winding streets. "Your father has many allies here, but also many enemies." They arrived at a massive building at the city's heart, a palace of sorts, all towering columns and grand archways. Guards stood at attention, their armor black as night, their eyes following Aiden's every move. Inside, the throne room was chaos. Dozens of vampires argued in a circular chamber, their voices echoing off marble walls. Some wore military uniforms. Others looked like scholars, carrying old books. A few were dressed for battle. When Seraphine entered with Aiden, the room fell silent. An elderly vampire, if such a thing existed, stepped forward. He was small, wizened, but his eyes held centuries of cunning. "Seraphine, the child. Where is Lucent?" "Wounded. Fighting to buy us time." Seraphine's voice rang with authority. "The Red Talon clan attacked our sanctuary. They used a cursed blade." Gasps rippled through the chamber. "If Lucent has fallen," someone began. "He hasn't fallen," Seraphine snapped. "But he cannot protect the boy alone. That's why I brought him here. To the one place the prophecy foretold he'd be safe." A vampire in a general's uniform scoffed. "Safe? The child brings danger with him. Every assassin in the realm wants him dead. Keeping him here paints a target on all our backs." "Then we fight," said another voice. A woman with blue-tinted skin and ice in her eyes. "We honor the prophecy and the bloodline." "The prophecy is a myth," the general shouted. "A fairy tale to give us false hope. Look at him." He pointed at Aiden with disgust. "A frightened child who can barely stand. This is supposed to unite 13 clans? This is supposed to save us." Aiden felt every eye on him, judging, measuring, finding him wanting. He wanted to disappear, to run, to wake up and find this was all just a nightmare. But then he remembered his father's words, "You are the Shadow Prince." "I didn't ask for this," Aiden said, his voice small but steady. The room went quiet again. "I didn't ask to be part of a prophecy. I just wanted to be normal. But people, vampires, are trying to kill me because of something I can't control. Because of who my parents were." He looked around the chamber, meeting eyes that glowed with inhuman light. "My dad is out there right now, maybe dying because he protected me. So I don't care if you think I'm weak. I don't care if you don't believe in the prophecy." His hands clenched into fists. "I'm here, and I'm not running anymore." Silence. Then the blue-skinned woman smiled. "The boy has fire. The boy has foolishness," the general muttered. "The boy has courage," Seraphine corrected. "More than some who've lived centuries." Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors burst open. A messenger stumbled in, breathing hard. "Generals, urgent news from the surface." "What is it?" the elderly vampire demanded. "A human. A woman. She breached the outer tunnels. She's demanding to see." The messenger's eyes found Aiden. "She's demanding to see the vampire child. Says she's his teacher. Says she can help." Aiden's eyes widened. "Mrs. Patterson?" "It's a trap," the general said immediately. "Or," Seraphine said slowly, "it's exactly what we need. A human ally, when the human hunters are closing in." The elderly vampire stroked his chin. "Bring her to the council chambers. Under guard. Let's see what the teacher has to say." As the messenger left, Seraphine knelt beside Aiden. Your teacher tracked you all the way here. That takes determination. Or obsession. Either way, be careful what you tell her. Aiden nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. Mrs. Patterson was here. In a vampire kingdom. Looking for him. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as alone as he thought. Mrs. Patterson looked terrified. She stood in the council chambers, surrounded by guards, her clothes dirty from crawling through tunnels. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the impossible architecture, the glowing rivers, the vampires watching her like predators, deciding if she was food. When she saw Aiden, relief flooded her face. Oh, thank God. You're alive. Mrs. Patterson? Aiden stepped forward, but Seraphine held him back. What are you doing here? I came to apologize. And to help, she looked at the assembled vampires. I know what I saw at the school. I researched. I know what you all are. And I know those hunters won't stop until they find Aiden. The general, a vampire named Malrek with silver hair and cold gray eyes, laughed darkly. A human teacher thinks she can help us? How touching. I can help because I'm human, Mrs. Patterson said firmly. I can move in places you can't. Daylight. Schools. Government buildings. If those hunters are organizing, they're doing it in the human world. I can be your eyes there. The elderly vampire, Lord Cassius, studied her carefully. And what do you want in return? Nothing. Just, Mrs. Patterson's voice softened as she looked at Aiden. Just to know I didn't fail him. That I didn't let my ignorance hurt a child who needed help. Aiden felt warmth in his chest. She'd come all this way, risked everything. For him. She's lying, Malrek said flatly. Humans always want something.
Power.
Immortality. Revenge. She'll betray us the first chance she gets. Or, Seraphine interjected, she's telling the truth. Not all humans are treacherous, Malrek. Coming from you, that's rich. Malrek's smile was cruel. Weren't you human once? Before Lucent turned you out of pity. Seraphine's hand moved to her sword, but Lord Cassius raised his hand. Enough. The woman stays under guard until we verify her intentions. If she proves useful, we'll reconsider her freedom. But Aiden started. The decision is made, young Prince. Cassius's tone left no room for argument. As guards escorted Mrs. Patterson away, she caught Aiden's eye and mouthed, "It's okay." But it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. The council session continued for hours. Aiden sat in a chair too big for him, listening to vampires argue about strategies, alliances, and ancient grudges he didn't understand. His eyelids grew heavy. The words blurred together. If Lucent doesn't return within 3 nights, the Blood Moon clan will see this as weakness. Perhaps we should consider negotiating with the hunters. That last one came from Malrek. Several vampires hissed in disapproval, but others nodded thoughtfully. You cannot be serious, Seraphine said. Negotiate with those who hunt us. Why not? Malrek stood, commanding the room's attention. They want the boy. We give them the boy. In exchange, they leave the Sanctum alone. The clans survive. Ice ran through Aiden's veins. You would trade the prophesied prince? Lord Cassius's voice was sharp. I would trade one child for the safety of thousands. Malrek's eyes swept the chamber. Look at him. He can barely manifest shadows. He has no training, no strength, no understanding of our world. Lucent was foolish to think a half-human child could unite what centuries of pureblood kings could not. Lucent is your king, Seraphine growled. Lucent is wounded, possibly dying, because of his obsession with this prophecy. Malrek's voice rose. How many more must fall? How many clans must we lose before we admit the truth? The boy is not our savior. He's our doom. Murmurs of agreement rippled through parts of the chamber. Aiden wanted to argue, to defend himself. But what could he say? Malrek was right. He was weak. Useless. Maybe everyone would be safer if. The boy stays, Lord Cassius's voice cut through the noise. Until Lucent returns or his fate is confirmed, we honor his wishes. Aiden is under our protection. Malrek bowed, but his smile was cold. As you command, my lord. Later, Seraphine showed Aiden to a room in the palace, a guest chamber with a bed carved from dark stone and curtains that shimmered like liquid night. Rest, she said gently. You've been through too much for one day. Seraphine, Aiden asked as she turned to leave. Do you think Malrek is right? That I'm just making things worse? She paused, then knelt beside him. I think prophecies are tricky things. They tell us what will happen, not how. Your father believes in you. I believe in you. That's enough for now. But what if I can't? Sleep, little prince. Tomorrow's worries can wait. She left, and Aiden was alone. He tried to sleep, closed his eyes, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. The cursed blade, his father's blood, Malrek's words, Mrs. Patterson's guilt. Hours passed, maybe minutes. Time felt strange here. Then he heard voices outside his door.
Low. Urgent.
Aiden crept closer, pressing his ear to the wood. Confirmed. Lucent won't survive the week. That was Malrek's voice. And the boy. Another vampire. Unfamiliar. Once Lucent is gone, the council will be divided. That's when we move. The hunters will pay handsomely for the child, and without the prophecy hanging over us, the clans will fall in line under my leadership. What about Seraphine? Let her grieve her fallen king. By the time she realizes what's happened, it'll be too late. Malrek's laugh was soft and vicious. The age of the old bloodlines ends tomorrow night, and a new order begins. Footsteps faded down the corridor. Aiden stood frozen, his heart hammering. Malrek was a traitor. He'd made a deal with the hunters.
And he was planning to.
The door opened. Aiden jumped back. But it wasn't Malrek. Mrs. Patterson slipped inside, a guard's keyring in her hand. I picked the lock, she whispered. I heard everything. We need to get you out of here.
Now.
We can't run, Aiden said. If Malrek takes over, he'll hand me to the hunters anyway. And then everyone here is in danger. Mrs. Patterson stared at him. Aiden, you're 8 years old. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. Aiden's voice was steadier than he felt. It's been my fight since the moment I was born. I just didn't know it yet. He moved to the window, looking out over the Umbra Sanctum. Thousands of vampires lived here. Families. Children, even. Young vampires who'd been turned centuries ago but still laughed and played in the glowing streets below. Malrek would trade them all for power. I need to find Seraphine, Aiden said. She'll know what to do. But when they opened the door, Seraphine was already there, along with Lord Cassius and 3 other council members who'd sided against Malrek. We heard, Seraphine said grimly. Malrek's betrayal runs deeper than we thought. He's been communicating with the hunters for months, feeding them information. The attack on the chapel, he arranged it. Rage burned in Aiden's chest. My dad almost died because of him. Your father is dying because of him, Cassius said quietly. Malrek ensured the assassins had a cursed blade. He wanted Lucent weakened so he could seize control. Where is he now? Mrs. Patterson asked. The throne room, said one of the council members, a vampire woman with emerald eyes. He's gathering his supporters, planning to declare Lucent dead and claim leadership at midnight. Aiden checked the chamber's clock, an ancient thing with hands that moved backward. 11:30. We have 30 minutes, he said. Can you stop him? Not without proof, Cassius admitted. Malrek has allies. If we move against him without evidence, it'll fracture the clans into civil war. You need me, Aiden's hands clenched. If I confront him, if he confesses in front of everyone, he'll kill you, Seraphine said flatly. You can't control your powers. You have no combat training. It would be suicide. Then train me, right now. Seraphine blinked. What? You said my powers would come when I needed them most. Aiden met her golden eyes. I need them now. So teach me.
Please.
20 minutes later, Aiden stood in a training chamber beneath the palace. Seraphine had tried everything: meditation, visualization, combat exercises. Nothing worked. The shadows remained shadows, unresponsive and dead. "It's not about force," Seraphine said, frustrated. "Your father commands shadows through will and fear. But you're different. You're half-human. Your power comes from somewhere else." "Where?" Aiden asked desperately. The clock was ticking. "I don't know. If I did." She stopped.
Took a breath.
"Tell me about your mother." The question caught him off guard. "What?" "Your father told me once that she was the bravest person he'd ever met. That she faced him, a vampire king, without fear and saw not a monster but a man." "Tell me about her." Aiden's throat tightened. "I never knew her. She died when I was born." "But you feel her, don't you? In your heart. The parts of you that aren't vampire. The parts that feel compassion, hope, love. That's her legacy." Tears pricked Aiden's eyes. "How does that help me fight?" "Because your father's power comes from fear and darkness. Yours," Seraphine knelt, placing her hand over Aiden's heart. "Yours comes from what makes you human. Not rage, not terror, but protection. The need to keep others safe." Aiden thought of his father, wounded and alone. Mrs. Patterson, risking everything to help him. The thousands of vampires in the city above who'd be slaughtered if the hunters came. The shadows around him stirred. Not violently.
Gently.
Like they were waking up. "That's it," Seraphine whispered. "Don't command them. Ask them. Show them who you want to protect." Aiden closed his eyes. Thought of everyone depending on him. The shadows rose like a tide, wrapping around his arms, his body, responding not to fear but to purpose. When he opened his eyes, they were glowing, not red like his father's, but silver, pure and bright. Seraphine smiled. "There you are, little prince." Midnight arrived. The throne room was packed. Hundreds of vampires crowded in, murmuring anxiously. At the center, Malrek stood before Lucent's empty throne, wearing ceremonial armor. "Brothers and sisters," he began, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. "It grieves me to announce that our king, Lucent Morrigan, has fallen. The cursed blade took his life, and with it, the old bloodline ends."
Gasps.
Some cried. Others looked relieved. "But from tragedy comes opportunity," Malrek continued. "I propose we abandon the failed prophecy and forge a new path. A path of strength through unity under my rule." "Liar." The word echoed through the chamber. Aiden stepped out from behind a pillar, Seraphine and Mrs. Patterson flanking him. His eyes glowed silver in the dim light, shadows swirling around his small frame like protective wings. Malrek's smile was predatory. "The child speaks. How touching." "You betrayed my father," Aiden said, his voice clear and strong. "You arranged the attack. You gave the assassins the cursed blade. And you made a deal with the hunters to trade me for power." "Prove it," Malrek challenged. "I will." Aiden raised his hand. The shadows responded instantly, reaching across the chamber to the walls where they pulled down ancient tapestries, revealing hidden alcoves. In those alcoves stood hunters. Armed. Ready. Waiting for Malrek's signal. The throne room erupted in chaos. "You brought humans into the Sanctum," someone screamed. Malrek's face went white, then red with fury. "You little." He lunged at Aiden with inhuman speed, claws extended. The shadows caught him midair. Aiden didn't think, didn't plan. He just knew. The shadows wrapped around Malrek like chains, lifting him off the ground, holding him suspended as he thrashed and snarled. "I could kill you," Aiden said quietly, "like you tried to kill my dad. But I won't." He looked at the assembled vampires. "Because that's not what a leader does. A leader protects. A leader shows mercy when they can. My mom was human. She taught my dad that. And now I'm teaching you." He released Malrek, letting him drop to the floor. Guards immediately seized the traitor. From the back of the chamber, a weak but familiar voice spoke. "Well said, son." Lucent stepped into view, supported by 2 healers. He was pale, wounded, barely standing but alive. "Dad." Aiden ran to him. Lucent caught him in a one-armed embrace. "I'm here. I'm here." The throne room erupted in cheers. 3 days later, Aiden walked up the steps of his school. The building looked different now. Not because it had changed, they'd repaired the broken windows and patched the classroom floor, but because he had changed. He saw the shadows differently now. Felt them moving with him, protective and patient. Students whispered as he passed. Everyone had heard some version of what happened. Gas leak. Terrorist attack. Mass hallucination. The official story changed depending on who you asked. But Aiden knew the truth. And so did the one person waiting at the classroom door. "Good morning, Aiden," Mrs. Patterson said softly. "Morning, Mrs. Patterson." They'd agreed on the surface. She'd keep teaching, he'd keep being a student. Pretend everything was normal. But her eyes held secrets now, and when she looked at him, it wasn't with pity or fear. It was with respect. "Take your seat," she said. "We have a lot to cover today." As Aiden sat down, Tommy Jenkins leaned over. "Dude, what actually happened? My mom said there were guys in masks, and everything went crazy." "Just a scary day," Aiden said with a shrug. "But it's over now." It wasn't over. Not really. But Tommy didn't need to know that. Mrs. Patterson began the lesson, something about fractions, but Aiden's mind wandered. The night before, in the throne room of the Umbra Sanctum, his father had addressed the gathered clans. Lucent still looked weak, the cursed blades poisoned slowly, leaving his system, but his voice carried authority. "Malrek's betrayal revealed our greatest weakness, division. For centuries, we've been fractured, each clan serving only itself. That ends now." He'd placed his hand on Aiden's shoulder. "My son has shown us something we'd forgotten. That strength isn't just power. It's compassion, protection, the courage to show mercy even to enemies." Lord Cassius had stepped forward. The prophecy spoke true. The Shadow Prince has proven himself worthy. Not everyone agreed. Some clans remained skeptical. But it was a start. Malrek and his conspirators were imprisoned in the deep vaults, awaiting judgment. The hunters who'd infiltrated the Sanctum were captured. And slowly, carefully, talks began between the 13 clans about unity. Real unity. Not forced through fear, but built on hope. "It won't be easy," Lucent had told Aiden privately.
Some will resist.
"Some will try to use you, for their own gain. But you've given them something they haven't had in millennia, a reason to believe in tomorrow." "What about you?" Aiden had asked. "Will you heal?" Eventually, Lucent had smiled, though pain flickered in his eyes. "Cursed blades leave scars. But I'm too stubborn to die. Your mother made me promise to watch you grow up. I intend to keep that promise." "Aiden? Aiden." He blinked. Mrs. Patterson was looking at him expectantly.
"Saudi."
"What was the question?" "I asked if you could solve the problem on the board." Aiden looked. Fractions. Simple math that seemed impossibly mundane after fighting vampire assassins and exposing traitors. But that was good. Normal is good. He walked to the board and solved the problem. The class clapped politely, and he returned to his seat. At lunch, he sat alone by choice. He needed the quiet, needed to process everything. But then a girl from his class, Maya, sat down across from him.
"Hey.
You okay? You've been weird since."
You know.
"The thing." "I'm fine," Aiden said. "Just tired." "Well, if you want to talk or whatever," she shrugged. "I'm around." She walked away before he could respond. But it felt good. Normal. Human. After school, Aiden walked home slowly. The sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and purples. He paused at a playground, watching kids on swings, their laughter carrying on the breeze. Part of him envied them. They'd never know the weight of prophecies or the burden of uniting ancient kingdoms. But another part of him, the part that was growing stronger each day, understood something they didn't. That shadows weren't just darkness. They were protection from harsh light. They were rest after long days. They were the spaces where secrets could be safe. Beautiful evening. Aiden didn't jump. He'd felt his father approach, moving through shadows only they could perceive. Lucen stood beside him, wearing sunglasses and a jacket despite the warm weather. He still couldn't handle direct sunlight, might never be able to, but he could exist in twilight now. "How is school?" Lucent asked.
Weird.
"Normal." Both. Aiden looked up at his father. "Do you think we can really do this? Unite the clans?" "Honestly, I don't know." Lucent's smile was tired but genuine. "But I've lived 700 years, and I've never seen vampires rally behind anyone the way they rallied behind you. You gave them something I never could." "What's that?" "Hope that we can be more than monsters." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink lower. "The hunters won't stop," Aiden said eventually. "Even with Malrek gone. They know about me now. Then we'll face them." Together, Lucent ruffled Aiden's hair, a surprisingly normal gesture. "You're not alone, Aiden. You never were. Seraphine, the loyal clans, even your teacher. You've built bridges I never thought possible." "Because of Mom," Aiden said softly. "She taught you love. You taught me. Now I'm teaching others." "Your mother would be proud," Lucent's voice caught. "So am I." The sun touched the horizon, and shadows stretched long across the playground. Aiden felt them moving. Not threatening. Not dangerous. Just present. Aware. Loyal. The shadows that had terrified him weeks ago now felt like friends. Guardians. Part of who he was meant to be. "Come on," Lucent said. "Seraphine's making dinner. She promised to attempt human food." "Is it going to be edible?" "Absolutely not. But we'll eat it anyway." They walked together through the twilight streets, a vampire king and his half-human son, carrying the weight of two worlds on their shoulders. But for tonight, they were just family. Behind them, the shadows followed faithfully, a kingdom's worth of darkness, bending to the will of a boy who'd learned that the greatest power wasn't commanding fear. It was inspiring hope. And somewhere deep beneath the city, in throne rooms and council chambers, vampires who'd lived for centuries were learning that lesson too. The war wasn't over. The hunters would return. Challenges waited in tomorrow's darkness. But Aiden wasn't afraid anymore. He was the Shadow Prince. And he was finally ready to become who he was always meant to be.